Thank you for being here, James Miller, licensed mental health counselor here in the beautiful Sunshine State of Florida. And today we're talking to Miss Paige Tucker. So
Hello.
good to see you again, Paige.
Great to see you too.
It's been a long time.
I know, a couple of years.
We were babies when we met.
I know. It's interesting how you meet people and you don't realize how they're going to play a role in your life.
Right. But that was something about you is the same thing I see about you today. I haven't seen you in years, and every time I see you, there's just always like this aura around you, like good positive energy and your care for the community. And I remember like the class that we were in together. As soon as you started talking, like everybody paid attention to what you had to say.
Thank you. So he's talking about the mental health first aid class. We met in a mental health first aid instruction class in Orlando, not knowing we both lived in the same area. So that was pretty cool. But, I have to say Jesus is the reason that I am the way that I am. I've known him my whole life, and he's influenced the decisions that I've made, and just really been there when even maybe family wasn't there or friends weren't there. And so for me, when people are always like, you have a light around you, it makes me think um, the verse in Matthew when it talks about like being a light, salt and light in the world, right? And when I learned that very long ago, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to be light and I'm going to be salty too.
Wow. So people told you that before that you had a light around you?
Even honestly, within this last probably 4 or 5 months. It's often some I hear, and I'm sure people have said it before, but now I'm just paying attention. And people always like, you're light," and I'm just like, "Thank you." And I think it kind of goes to like how I was raised. I was raised to not look like how I feel or not look like what I'm going through. Um, but always being prepared to set the atmosphere, right? So we're in this place or this culture now where it's like, I'm going to match your energy. And it's always my goal to change the energy in the room. If I walk into a room and it's somber, I'm going to bring the party. And it's going to be fun, right? But so I don't believe in matching energy. I believe in changing the energy.
Ooh, nice. I love it. And that's one thing I've always respected about you too is like you always bring some kind of positive atmosphere to like the community, to the people around you. It's like that's something that's natural for you for some reason. Like, and that's what drew me to you. I think even the first time I met you, like I asked you like, "Hey, will you go eat lunch with me, or can I take you to dinner or something?" Like,
Yeah. Honestly, I have to also say, like, my great grandmother, she passed away in 2018, but she was my best friend. I was fortunate enough to not just know her, but she was my best friend. And she was the same way. Being at her funeral, yes, while I missed her, it was amazing to see so many people say all great things about her, right? And as I sat there, I said, when that day comes for me, I want the same, right? I want people to just say all great things about me. And they were true. Like no one was faking because she always believed you never you invite people over, you're hospitable, you feed them, you care for them, right? And so because that's how I was raised, that's how I treat people. And just growing up in church, I've been in church my whole life. Like I said, I've known Jesus my whole life, and they always say, be the hands and feet, be the hands and feet of Christ. And I recognize at a very young age, maybe I'm the only Jesus that some people see.
wow.
And I have to be a great representative, no matter what I'm going through. Being that great representative is really important. And so that's just how I've carried myself. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I have my moments where I'm probably not the nicest person in the world. There might be some people who be like, well, she wasn't nice to me. I am human and I have my moments. But I even that was also something that my great grandmother taught me. She's like, even when you're around people that you may not gel with or something about them just doesn't sit right with you, you can always still say hi. You can always speak. So I don't believe in being rude.
Wow.
Right. And so just having her as that example and being there that day, hearing so many people say great things about her, it was like, that's who I want to be like. And you're talking about someone who believe she dropped out of school in the ninth grade, so, but I still remember her traveling and going on cruises and all of these things, and me looking at the pictures like, I'm going to do that one day,
Mm.
and actually the year she passed, I went to Dubai. And I remember her saying, like, I wish I could come with you. I would bring my wheelchair and I'll be there right with you. And it's just amazing how, by society standards, her not having a high school education and, not being, what people think, they would say that's not someone you look up to. But I look up to her and I carry her everywhere that I go. And every time I do something, I just think, I hope she's proud. And I think that's important, having that person that always keeps you grounded. And yeah, so for me, it's just always making sure that I stay grounded, no matter how successful I become. I people come around me all the time and like, oh, I just feel honored to be around you. And I'm like, me? What? Like, because I don't hold myself to this on this pedestal. I don't think I'm above anyone. Anytime I meet someone, it's always, how can I make their life better?
Absolutely, and that's such an important thing that you're talking about. Is like with her passing, and then you think about the legacy that she left, and then what you did with that. Because as a mental health therapist, this one thing I notice is like situations like that make or break people. You could have easily went the other way with that situation, but you made a determination within yourself. And everything that I follow for you, like reading your book that we're going to talk about in a minute, it's just like you always have a game plan and you always know where you're going. Like your internal compass seems very strong.
Yeah, I laugh all the time when I tell people this, but like the awareness that I have, that internal compass, I say, has to be like I said, my relationship with God. But I've always been this way. At 1 year old, 6 years old, 8 years old, I've always been this way, and it's hard to explain that. I was just on another podcast and I was trying to explain that, and I'm like, the wisdom that I have, the knowledge that I have, I just somehow I've just always known. Somehow I've just always had the wisdom to do the right thing. And I always say it goes back to that spiritual foundation that my family set from a long time ago. And growing up in a religious household, it was not perfection at all. And I can see where, for me, I have a healthy balance of my relationship with God and then therapy and what that looks like, and having positive mental health. And I can see where a lot of people put all the weight on Jesus and then there's no work on their end.
Wow.
And so I can say, from my family, I came from that, where it's like, oh, we just put everything in the hands of God, but it's like there's no real work happening in that therapy space. And so there's a lot of healing that has to happen, which impacts impacts the decisions that you make, and creates toxic environments and things like that. And so for me, like, growing up and moving away and just developing my own relationship with Christ and really understanding that, I was in a group session last night, and someone said, like, I grew up in a Christian household, but my family never presented Jesus to me. They presented all of these principles, but they never presented who he is, right? And I said, I can identify with that, because it wasn't until I moved away that I really started to understand, like, oh, this is what this relationship is supposed to look like. And I feel like it has influenced so many of the decisions that I've made. And like I said, I don't always make the best decisions, like, at all. But it's always that, like, that's what always brings me back. That's what always grounds me, even when I go off the deep end. Like, I had been struggling with depression and anxiety for a very long time, but I didn't have the words. So going to that mental health for first aid training just revealed a lot for me. And then losing my grandmother, I think 2 months later. So now it's like this new concept has been introduced to me of mental health, and then trying to navigate grieving and what that looks like. That was a very challenging time for me, and probably was one of the darkest experiences I've had with depression, because you lose someone. At the time I was in a relationship and the person wasn't there for me in that moment.
Mm.
And so it was just a lot of things happening, but I didn't realize it was just what I call a breaking and a shaking, like breaking things off, shaking up my life, and really challenging me to really operate in my purpose. But I didn't realize that being a mental health advocate was part of that, right? I didn't realize that, you know, being a advocate for a single season was part of that. It was those that class and her passing that really shaped where I am.
Wow. What a beautiful story, Paige. It's like, it's amazing. And I didn't even realize because I had just met you at that time and then I didn't know your grandmother passed 2 months later. Like,
Mhm.
what a heavy thing to go through. I see
Yeah.
you even kind of tearing up just
Yeah.
talking about it.
Yes, because I mean that's the one thing. Anyone that's grieving, I just want to let you know, like it doesn't. You never stop grieving. You never stop missing the person. It's just you respond differently. It's she's been gone. I know one day I sat and I was thinking, I'm like, she passed away when she was 88 and I was 28. And I thought, I'm like, man, if I lived to be her age, I would have lived without her for 60 years. And to me, that was like, what? I can't even wrap my head around that. Because, she was all I knew for so long. And I'm just fortunate to know my great grandmother because so many people didn't have that opportunity to know their great grandmother. So I'm grateful for that. But so, yeah, that just going through that, breakup really kind of put me on this track of like, wanting to do something different. So my great grandmother passed in December. In January, I started my business. And then starting that business, once again, it just kind of took me on this new trajectory that I didn't even know was possible. So sometimes working through that grief can really help you discover like who you are.
Right.
I think sometimes that loss sends you on a journey that you would have never traveled if you didn't lose something or someone.
Wow. Beautifully said.
Now, the way that a lot of it is things that I've learned since taking mental health first aid and becoming an advocate and being in that space with other therapists and having these type of conversations is what has helped me. And then just going to therapy myself. Going like in 2021, I was in intense therapy for an entire year. Every week I was in therapy.
Wow, that's dedication.
Yes, because for me it was like, one, being a business owner and having a team and then trying to manage life, it was like I can't bear the weight of all of these things by myself. I need someone to talk to. I need someone to help me work through the things that I'm feeling. I need someone to help me be a better boss, be a better friend, be a better girlfriend, be a better daughter, all these things. And finding a therapist who I connected with and I could just be real with. And I think that's the fear for some people is, well, I don't want to go to therapy because I'm afraid I'm going to break down. But that's what happens. When you see a building that is torn up, oftentimes they tear it down before they rebuild it.
Paige, that's so deep what you're talking about right now. Exactly right. And that's another thing I love about you is the authenticity. Like you go beyond surface level. Everybody that you talk to typically in a day to day, it's just always, how you doing? How's the weather? How was work today? And it's like, okay, great. But it's like, no, how are you? How are you really doing? How are you doing if you're not doing good? And that's what I tell my people when they come to see me. It's like, if you're ever in a really bad place, like you sit down and you tell me that first of all. Let's talk about that. And even emotions, people are so afraid to talk about emotions. And I think that's something that I hope that therapists are getting away from was like this wall where I'm just going to kind of be here emotionless as a robot listening to you. Like, no, when you're telling me your story, like you're making my emotions come up. I'm getting tearful hearing some things that you say, because I can tell how impactful that is. And I think that's the resonance between us, and that's so important. So I see what you're saying about also connecting to a therapist.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like my therapist was like my friend, my best friend. I'm like, girl, let me tell you what happened with my life today. And that's the rapport that we were able to develop. And I tried therapy in college. I was in an abusive relationship and I needed to go to therapy after, and I hated it. It was terrible. I literally would go in and I would just talk and talk. and there was no rapport. There was no homework. There was nothing. And I was like, I don't like this. I can get through this myself. I can just go and record myself talking if this is what therapy is. And that kept me out of therapy for a long time. That was in 2011, and I didn't attend my first therapy session. Even though I was advocating for it, I didn't go back to therapy until 2020.
Wow, that long. What was it that finally got you back in?
Oh goodness, the pandemic.
Oof.
Having all of that time by myself, and I was in a relationship at the time as well, and I didn't want to ruin that relationship, and I got tired of ruining relationships. I got tired of self-sabotaging, and I was like, I have to go to therapy to figure out what is wrong with me, what has happened to me, to process all of these things. And so that was the catalyst. And then but it was trial and error, because I had some therapists who kind of limited what I talked about. And I didn't really like that, because it's like, this is really important in my life, and I really would like to talk about this. And so I didn't like that either. And so when I found a therapist that I really connected with, she allowed me to talk about whatever I want to talk about. Whether it was business, whether it was relationships, whether it was my favorite TV show, it didn't matter. She just allowed that time to be my time, to talk about what I wanted to talk about, and then she would give me her insight on those things. And that is what was most helpful for me.
That's wonderful. So what is your advice for someone in your shoes that was maybe going through something heavy and you're trying to find the right fit to be able to open up to talk about what you want to talk about, but at the same time having your intention in mind of what I'm trying to accomplish by being here? Like, what would you say to someone in that position now to...
I would say being honest with your therapist about that, about why you're there, right? Don't let your therapist dictate why you're there. You tell them,
wow,
this is what I'm looking for. These are the things that I want. And if that person can't handle that, then that's not therapist for you.
Wow.
And don't give up. Therapy is not one size fit all. So if you find a therapist or 2 or 3 that you don't connect with, keep trying. Until you find that person that makes you feel most comfortable. Like, your therapist may not be like a best friend to you. That may not be what you need. It's what I need, what I needed. So it's looking at, like, what do you need to be whole? And then how can your therapist partner with you? Because I think a lot of people think therapy is the solution and answer for everything. It's not. It's not. It helps you to develop a toolkit of how you respond to things. It helps you process things. But I find people like, I went through a challenge where the sewer backed up in my home, and I was mad, and I was angry, and I was frustrated. And I remember someone asking me, well, I hope you talk to your therapist about this. And I was like, what is my therapist going to do? Like, come and clean up the poop in my house? Like, this is not for me. It wasn't anything I felt I needed to take to my therapist, because what can my therapist do in that moment? I mean, yes, they can help me process it, but the tools I've already been given is what allows me to process it. But I can still be upset. I can still be mad at the situation. But then I do something about it. But I think some people have started to use therapy as a crutch, where they're literally depending on someone else to tell them what to do. Have you seen that? Have you?
Oh, that's so deep. Actually, yeah, we're trained to know, like, don't let yourself ever become a crutch for anybody, because people need to be able to develop those skills. And even for me, autonomy, that ties back in my mom. My mom was Hispanic. I grew up in Alabama. I remember my mom passed away when I was 19, and I was sitting there at the dinner table, and my dad was back overseas, my sister was overseas, and I was like, man, I'm hungry. And I realized, like, man, my mom's been in there for 19 years cooking, and I could have been watching her, talking to her, learning about cooking. And, so then I realize now, and that's when I have families in my office, I'm always like, hey, let's start teaching each other skills, teach each other about your histories, teach each other, So I think that's something that you and I really connect on, too, is like that family, and like, what are you giving to the next generation, and how are you helping them to become more independent and Not that they have to be independent, like I'm putting walls up, but it's just like how can we be more open and work together and be stronger as individuals and as a cohesive community.
Yeah, I believe in empowerment, and I know that's like a buzzword, but when I think of empowerment, it goes back to I was going to take things back to the Bible, but like yes, I can give you a fish, but if I teach you how to fish, you'll never go hungry again, right? And so for me, I stand by that. So when people are like, "Oh, can I have money?" Well, let me show you how to make your own, right? Like, let me show you how to do these things. Let me empower you to be independent. And so I believe in the power of equipping and showing. Yes, there are some times where people just need your help and they're like, look, I don't have time for the lessons. I just need your help. And I get that. But then there are also times where if this becomes a pattern, it's like, okay, how can we break this cycle of what you're going through? And how can I empower you to have the tools you need to be successful in whatever it is that you're pursuing? That's important because I've seen that. Me being the person who moved away from home as soon as I turned 18. I've never moved back. I've lived so far away from my family, and I've just thrived. And I believe in the power of sink or swim. Sometimes you just have to take the life jacket off and can you sink or swim? And I think a lot of times people think coddling their children, coddling their friends, always being the person they can call on is helpful, and it's crippling them. It's like you're trying to be the God in this person's life, and that's not your role. And so I think a lot of people miss out on greatness. They miss out on actualizing their potential because of the crutches in their life.
Beautifully said. Yeah, one of my old professors here in Troy, Tampa, Dr. Junta, said that. I think his wife had told him that, but loving to failure sometimes. That parents always want to do so much for a child, but it's like I think it's a balance. Like you want to be there, you want to offer security, but at the same time, you need to allow their independence to a certain extent where they're exploring. Let them make mistakes. Let them learn.
Mm-hmm. True. The mindset that I always had is when I left the house, I had no help. Now, whether I had help or not, I don't know. But in my mind, I didn't. I have to figure this out. It's me and God. That's it. That's all I have. And that has carried me a long way. Have I learned to ask for help when I need it? Sure. I've learned, and that was a struggle. And just learning how to ask for help and being vulnerable. But I didn't automatically think, oh, someone's coming to my rescue. Because it taught me to learn how strong I am. When I moved to Florida, I had no car, I had no friends, I had no family, I had never even been here. And I was only making $840 a month. And for me, that was one of the best times in my life. At the time it wasn't. But now it is, because it showed me how strong I am and I can do anything. And if I can do that, if I can literally thrive off knowing what it's like to have the last $10 in my pocket and having to budget and be on food stamps and all of these different things to where I am now, and I'm just like, I've already seen the worst. It's only up from here.
And that's why I laugh. I love that because I think that speaks to that resiliency. People tell me all the time, like something just happened, a major life event. Now I'm left with nothing. I'm like, okay, well, let's start rebuilding.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get a crock pot. Let's get some vegetables. Let's cook you a meal every night. Let's just get on that path. And then the next day you add a little something to that. And the next day you get your little bed eventually. And you know what I mean? You keep building and building and moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one step at a time. One step at a time, one moment at a time. It's a principle that I actually talked about in my book that I borrowed from AA. And, the concept is if I can just be sober one day, 24 hours, I can do it another 24 hours, right? And so for me, as a single person, the same thing. If I could be single for 24 hours, I can surely do it again. And then you can apply that to anything you want to. Well, if I could work out for 1 hour, surely I could do it again tomorrow. And so I just think that's a great principle, and not try to think of the end game. Sometimes people can't handle the end game. Sometimes the end game is more than you can conceptualize, or it's overwhelming. And it's like one day at a time. One day at a time.
Huge. Exactly right. And that's what I tell my clients a lot of times. I think with anxiety, especially, is like if you think about a task that you want to accomplish and you think that task is so huge, you visualize that task as if you're about to go climb Mount Everest, and then you tell yourself, oh, that's just too much. I can't do that. And that's what I'm always saying, like, get a pen and paper.
Mm-hmm.
Break it down. What can we do today? How much time do you have left today? What is a couple things you could handle to get you on the right track?
Yep. Anytime I'm doing something that's around the team and we have a big task, I always break it down. And my friend was like, you're always breaking it down. And I'm like, but I want to simplify it for people so that they don't get overwhelmed with this daunting task. And that's life. If we look at ourselves and say, hey, I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm, 50, and we walk out the door with that heaviness on our mind, we're going to get discouraged. But if we say, hey, I just want to make an extra $50 this week, surely you can do that. And then you just keep going and you keep going and you keep setting those smaller goals. So I'm big on goals, but I like action steps. Okay, yes, we have this goal, but what are the steps that we need to take to get there? And I think a lot of times we have this list of goals, but then there aren't any of the smaller goals or the steps that we need to take. I like to help people visualize. What does this actually look like? People see what they think they want, and then people come to me all the time. Oh, I want to start a nonprofit. Oh, you do? Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about that. What does that look like? First of all, do you want to own anything? Because if you want to own something, it's not a nonprofit. And when I start breaking it down, it's like, I don't think I want to do that. Or for some people, it's like, oh, I thought this was going to be harder. So a lot of times it's taking those big things, breaking it down to simplify it so we have a better understanding of what we have before us.
Wonderful. I love it. Breaking it down. And that's the same way therapy works. It's like you come in, you're going to tell your story. Let's figure out what's going on. Let's make a game plan. What are the problems that you're facing right now? What are the goals you would like to accomplish? What can we work on every time you're coming into therapy? How do we check back in together to make sure that we're still on the same page? And I think also the communication to make sure, like, hey, are we where we need to be? Is there anything that I could do to help to facilitate to get back on track in my off? So let me know and let's work toward those goals. Paige, I would love to make a transition if we could.
Yeah.
You are very young. I'm not even going to say how young you are, but you're also an author, which I think is pretty amazing.
Yes.
I have your book here, and you actually, I have to be honest. I was going through a breakup after the time I had met you, and then you just happened to tell me, like, oh, I got this book, and you signed my book. You were so sweet.
Thank you.
So tell us about this.
So the book is #SingleSeason. Discover how to be your best you while you're single. So first of all, I did not want to write this book. I did not want to write this book because I felt like writing this book was going to make me the poster child for singleness.
Wow, you said that.
Yeah, and I said I don't want to do that. I don't want to be the poster child for singleness. I want to be a wife. But if I'm saying I want to be a wife, but I'm representing this, how do I get there? And then it was just one of those things where I just had to trust God. And it's like, I don't want to write this. I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it. But I don't want to do this. And so it took me 4 years to write it. I started with a breakup and me, feeling like I'm almost to the finish line. We're talking marriage and we're almost there. We got a date set and everything. We're ready to go. And then, cold feet and different things happen. And then, I just remember going through that breakup, starting to write. At first, it was like a fiction book on our relationship. And then, I don't know. I don't even remember how the transition happened to being like, I want to write something about being satisfied in Christ in this season. And then I took too long to write that. To write the book. So then someone else came up with that name. So I was like, oh, well, can't do that. But I just remember the biggest catalyst for me was being unsatisfied. I had gotten my master's. I, had the career that I thought I wanted, all of these things, but I was miserable. And I kept trying to figure out, like, why am I miserable? Like, I have, quote unquote, the American dream. So why am I miserable? And I remember having a conversation with my grandfather, and he's like, yeah, you did everything right, but you don't take enough positive risk.
Ooh.
And I was like, you're right. I color within the lines. I'm a rule follower. And so that was, I believe, August of 2016. And then I just remember it was going to be time for me to pay my student loans back. And I'm like, I got to make some extra money. Started working at Kohl's part-time. Hated it. That was my first, I think it was my first time doing retail. I mean, I used to work at a shoe store, but this is my first time doing clothing. And I was like, what in the world? And then I remember wanting to start a jewelry business. And I was going to do like wholesale jewelry and all this stuff. And then this other opportunity was presented to just do it in an easier way. And I remember honestly not even having the money to start the business. It was $99. And I remember having to use a credit card to start it because I'm like, I don't even have the extra $99.
Just put pressure on myself.
Yeah, like I don't even have the extra. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to use this. And then that was the day that changed my life completely. Like the person you see here was started that day. I think it was November 14th, 2016. It was late. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And I remember paying for it and calling my aunt, who's like a mom to me. And we're like brainstorming business names and all of these things. And I did not know how that was going to change my life. And then I had a small view. I just wanted to make $300 extra. That was it.
That you always talk about.
Yeah, that's it. Just $300 extra. When I realized that I could do that and with nothing with my business, that turned into me leaving my job and me really getting deep into this jewelry business. And in that process, it was still me being faithful in my walk, being so laser focused on my relationship with God. That just led me to start thinking about, wow, if I had stayed in that relationship, I would have never discovered any of these things. And just learning so much about myself. The fact that I could sell things. I didn't even like doing fundraisers.
I remember you mentioned
yeah,
that. Yeah,
like,
I thought about that too. So you had a lot of anxiety before that happened, or like you were very had self-doubt, it seemed, going into that.
Actually, I would say going into that business, I was very close-minded. I had just made up in my mind what I wanted because I didn't have any examples of anything except find a good job, buy a house, and that's it. That's it. And so now it's like I'm in a place I've never been before, but I like it. It's this new place of stepping out on faith. And I went from coloring in the lines, like lines. I'll just skip this and draw whatever I want. And just going against the rules, but always keeping my faith at the forefront of that. And so the more that I pursued this thing, because I can't even say it really was a dream, because it wasn't. But the more I discovered my ability to be an entrepreneur, then I discovered my ability to be a coach. Now I have all of these women who are older than me, looking to me to guide them in their business and coach them and all of this. And I'm like, wait, what in the world? That sparking something in me to say, hey, I want to do more of this. And then that led to mental health first aid, and which then led to me starting my business and working with therapists and helping them to, hold conferences and all of this stuff. And all of those things help shape the things I talked about in my book. How to be the best version of yourself while you're in this season. And had I not had that extended period of singleness, because that was like just 3 years of just laser focus. None of these things would happen because I would have been, if I had my way, I would have been a wife and a mom, and I wouldn't have been worried about second income. I wouldn't have had the time to start a business or do any of those things, right? So then I started thinking, well, how many other people need tools or guidance on how to operate in their singleness, how to do singleness well? Because in church, it's get healed, get married. But there's a whole thing between getting healed and getting married. What happens in the middle of that? And so then I just started thinking, well, okay, what about going back to school? What about writing that book? What about starting a business? What about doing all of these things now so that your relationship, your marriage is smoother? Mm-hmm. How many people get married and then decide I'm going back to school? Now that's a burden on your family. When you had 5 to 10 years of consistent singleness where you could have gone back to school, a lot of people wait for their spouse to start living. When in actuality, you need to start living first. Because then you actually are able to discover your purpose and you're better matched with the person that you're supposed to be with. I was on a panel the other day and this guy said something perfect. He said, when you chase companionship before purpose, you often don't end up with the right person. But when you chase purpose before companionship, then God knows who to send to help you. And that was deep. Because truly, like, marriage is so much more than just companionship. Like, when you look at, for people that are Christian, because I know everyone probably isn't, but for those are, you look at the Bible, Adam was in the field working. Literally, just minding his business. He was not saying, hey, God, when are you going to send me a wife? Mm. Well, when God decided that, man should not be alone, I'm going to send someone to help you. But if you are squandering your single season, what do you need help with? You don't even know. And so then you get in marriage, you start to discover your purpose, right? And then you realize this person that you married doesn't fit that.
That is so deep. And I actually watched that same episode you're talking about, and I'll include the link so other people can find that, because you're right. That guy, he was when he said that, I stopped, because it's kind of like you always punch me in the gut with the things you say sometimes. And when that guy said that, it was like I was just I always listen to stuff like that, and I was doing something, and I was like, oh wait, hold on, I gotta go and write that down. I gotta figure that out, because that was you just kind of gut checked me real quick.
Yeah, because we want to be with someone so badly that we forget that we have other work to do. We were not put on this earth just to be husbands and wives. How that has been misconstrued, I have no idea. We all were built with a purpose to do something else besides be a husband and wife. And some of us are not even meant to be husband and wife. Some of us are not guaranteed that. And so for me, this book was to provide a different perspective. This book is not to prepare you for marriage. It's to prepare you for you. It's to prepare you for discovering what is it that you're put on this earth to do. What else do you need to do to be a better version of yourself? Do you need to go to therapy? Do you need to get your finances in order? Who do you need to forgive? What do you need to pursue? Do you need to go back and go back to school and finish that degree? And what I think a lot of people also don't realize is, so I'm reading this book called Wholeness by Touré Roberts. A great book. You should definitely read it. But he said, so many people get stuck. So whatever your purpose is at the top of the mountain. And he said, so many people get stuck in the middle. They're going up the mountain, they get discouraged. And he said, people get stuck in Smallville. And the top of your mountain is Destinyland. And so my question is, how many people get stuck in Smallville waiting for a spouse when your spouse is in Destinyland? Like, what if you're supposed to buy the house first And in the process of buying the house, you meet the person you're supposed to be with. What if you're supposed to go back to school and in that process you meet the person? What if you're supposed to start the business? And in that process, or on the other side of that, is your person. You have to know where you're going and know what you need help with before someone can come in and help you. That's why our divorce rates are so high. Because we got people just getting together just cause. And I could go on a whole other thing about like how purity culture rushes us down the aisle. Right? We just want to have sex. That's all we want to do. So in order to stay pure, let me marry the first person I can meet. Instead of spending that time working on you, getting to know you. How do you convey to your spouse your wants and needs if you don't know your wants and needs? You haven't had that time with yourself. How many people enjoy their own company? If you don't enjoy your own company, how do you expect anyone to enjoy your company? Like, it makes no sense. And I'm not saying this in judgment because I was the person that I talk about. For so long, all I cared about was getting a husband. And then, but it isn't even until now. So I wrote this book, started writing this book in 2016, published in 2019. It's 2023, and I'm just cracking the surface of what God has put me here to do.
Ooh, that's beautiful because that tells me you're waking up every day like you're so excited. And that's why your energy is so good because you have so much to do. It's like I don't have enough hours in the day to accomplish everything that I want to accomplish.
No, and so if you spend that time worrying about when he or she is going to come, you're wasting precious time. And this is time that you don't get back. I cherish my alone time. Every time I walk in, I have a dog now. So
really, what is your dog's name?
His name is Juno.
Juno, okay.
Ooh, Juno is Juno. But even just having a dog, I'm never alone. Wherever I am, he is. Oh, you going to the bathroom? Okay, I'm coming. Oh, you're on a Zoom call? I want to be on the Zoom call too. Oh, you're watching TV? Here I come. I'm snuggling up. Oh, you're in the bed? I'm coming in the bed. And he's just a dog. And that's new for me because I'm just used to be completely alone. Now I have to sound like a horse running through my house because he's just running and having a good time. Now it's something to care for. And, I have to move my schedule around him. All of these different things. I can't just get up and travel when I want to. For me, just having an animal was a big change for me. And so when you add humans to that, that's a huge change. I'm still adjusting to an animal.
Wow. So now that's why you're saying it's so important to walk through your single season, be on your own, learn yourself. So deep. And something else I want to talk about that's very interesting that you always mention over and over again is those rules that you live by, like staying in the line or you said you stayed in the lane or
coloring in the line.
Coloring in the lines, yeah, because I think that's a big part of therapy too, is helping people to understand because of your life history, you develop certain core beliefs about yourself, like I'm not capable, I'm not good enough. And then because of that, then you have these rules that you make for yourself, like I might as well not even try something new. So you know what I mean? And then that's something else I notice about you and your resiliency is that you're always kind of self-reflecting and you're thinking about that. You're going to therapy to come to terms with that, not coloring the lines anymore. And then for your granddad to call you out on your stuff and then for you to listen to granddad and make a move.
Yeah, that really convicted me and be like, you're absolutely right. But sometimes I think we need a reality check. Right? That's why it's good not to hold your feelings in, not to pretend, to be honest. Obviously, you can't share your feelings with everybody. But find those trusted people that you can do that with. And, those people that are going to challenge you to grow, that are going to question things. All the times we're like, I'm grown. I don't need no one to question me. I don't need no one to tell me what to do. Yes, you do. We all do. We all need accountability. Accountability is so important to grow. The Bible says, like, man is not meant to be alone. And I think a lot of times people just think of that as having a spouse. But no, like, we're meant to be in community with each other. We're meant to help each other grow. And, that's really important. So even for those people who are in their single season, build community. Get people who are going to challenge you to be better. Get people who are going to hold you accountable, who are not going to let you sabotage yourself. When you start that negative self-talk, they're like, don't say that. Don't believe that. Don't do that. And so that's really important, to making sure, like, make sure you surround yourself with good people. I always say surround yourself with people who are already where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Don't surround yourself with people who are also throwing themselves a pity party, because then y'all just gonna have a big pity party. Surround yourself with people who are going to challenge you, who are going to make you want to grow and thrive. And that's really important. And now I will say, as I'm talking about growth and thriving, I'm not talking about hustling. Because I think hustle culture is very toxic. And we've become accustomed to this hustle and grind and team no sleep. And I rebuke team no sleep. I like sleeping. So I don't think that I have to be a part of Team No Sleep to accomplish the things that God is calling me to do. It's called discipline. It's called routine. You can find time to do anything that you want to do. Less social media time. Less time talking on the phone. All kind of other things.
Oh, you didn't want to hear that.
Right. There could be a healthy balance in pursuing your purpose while having a 9-to-5, whatever it is that how you bring in income. Because everybody's not meant to be an entrepreneur. But everyone does have a purpose. But everyone's purpose is not entrepreneurship. You can be the salt and light on your job. Maybe that's what you're called to do, right? But just know you can make time for anything that you truly want to make time for. It's just discipline.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. And that's why I tell people, too, is like when I was going through my season, and that's something else I want to ask you about later, too, is like the season. I hear a lot of people say that. What does that mean? But I know when after my mom passed, I was just so lost. And it's like you're searching for this thing. And that's why it's important to find like you said, the community around you. You have to build your community. Mm-hmm. Because in that time of crisis, you're not thinking clearly. You're not doing a really good job taking care of yourself. Your sleep's off. Your diet's off. Mm-hmm. But I believe that wholeheartedly, too. And I tell people, if you don't have anything else, get you a notebook and a pencil, and let's just start making a little routine. What's your day look like? What's your week look like? What do you want to do 5 years from now? Whatever we can do to start kind of moving the ball forward, let's
do that. And, I mean, your season, honestly, everyone's season is different. Some people's season is a year, a couple of months. Some people's season is years, decades. And I don't want anyone to think that we find ourselves in these seasons just because we're doing something wrong. Sometimes I believe that sometimes we have to just learn how to wait well and do what we need to do until the time comes. Sometimes it's nothing we can do. It's just a part of the plan for it to happen on when it's supposed to happen. So don't make this season a transactional season where it's, let me make sure I check off all of these boxes. And when this box is checked, then I'm going to get this person, because that's not true either. I wrote this book not as a guarantee that if you do all the things in this book that you will get a partner. I wrote this book as if you do all these things that I talk about, you will be a better person. And but a better person doesn't always mean that you end up with someone. But this book is to change your mindset about that, to find joy and happiness in this place for however long it is.
Wow.
I think when we get in these seasons and we're waiting for the season to end, we dismiss the joy in that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I've been like, come on, Lord, now this season has it's been long. Like, what's really going on? Ooh. But then a lot of times I have to check myself, but just continue living. Just continue living, continue enjoying, continue working, continue doing all of these things with not having an expectation. A lot of times we set ourselves up with these expectations, and when those expectations aren't met, we are disappointed, right? And so, yeah. So when you talk about it, so when I talk about season, um, that season is it changes with each person. I didn't think my season would be this long, but I'm just learning how to wait well and operate well.
I love that word that you keep saying, wait well. That's a really cool term that you said. And also, it makes more sense to me when you say a season now, because now, as a therapist, I see people in my office every day who are telling me, oh, I just went through a relationship breakup and I'm all alone and I don't know what to do. I can't make heads or tails. But from what I'm hearing you say with a season too, it's just like sit in it, stay with that. Maybe it's just time for you to kind of sit down for a minute by yourself and like let's kind of look at the big picture and figure some things out before you just jump into another relationship.
Mm-hmm. And actually do an inventory. What about that relationship? What did you like? What didn't you like? What did you do? Because we always say what everyone else does, right? But what did you do? How can you change those things? How did you contribute to the breakdown of that relationship? And for your next relationship, what do you need? Not what do you want, what do you need? And I actually have a chapter called What You Want versus What You Need. You may want the 6 foot tall, dark, and handsome, but God is like, no, he's going to be 5'2", but he's going to be what you need. Are you open to that? Right? Or, for guys, I don't want to just seem like I'm picking on women. But, for men, if you're saying, hey, I want her to have the Baywatch body and all of these things, and she doesn't, are you okay with that? Are you okay with caring for or desiring a person's morals and character more than you desire the physical thing? Some people may say, hey, I want my husband to be a billionaire, but he works at Lowe's. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with Lowe's. It pays the bills.
I used to work at Lowe's.
You know what I'm saying? It pays the bills.
I enjoy working at Lowe's. Actually.
Exactly. And that's not to slight anybody at Lowe's, but it's just to say that may not be in the cards for you.
Right.
Are you okay with that?
So you're saying connect to the person, not the expectation of what you're trying to.
Yeah, because a lot of those superficial things can be attained if that's what you really desire. Right? If you desire a husband with a 6-pack and he doesn't have a 6-pack, he may get in the gym together, like those things. But people base those things, the outer appearance, the outer things, the things that are changeable on a lifetime, and they're not looking at a person's heart and character. And I had to experience that firsthand. This person looks great on paper. On paper, we look like the best couple in the world. And in reality, I don't even want to be around you for 2 seconds.
Ooh, every day I see that.
The moral and the character. And so a lot of times we lie to ourselves. And we make ourselves think this is what we want. It's not about your want. It's about what do you need. What do you need to thrive in a relationship? And I think a lot of times we go off the wants. And then, as a result of that, we have failed relationships and failed marriages.
So, Paige, to sum it up for a single season, and we need to make sure that people know how to get a hold of a copy of Single Season if they would like.
Yeah, so it's on Amazon, it's on Target.com, Walmart.com, BarnesandNobles.com. Just type in hashtag, like the hashtag sign, Single Season, one word, and it'll come up. Or you can just type it in Google. If you type in hashtag Single Season in Google, it'll come right up on the first page. And the picture comes up so you can see it.
And on my channel too, I'll include a link to get you straight to it. And Paige was graceful enough to give me a copy back when I was going through my season. And my season, like your season, has lasted a lot longer than I expected. But that's why I'm so glad to have people like you in my corner that make me feel okay with that.
Thank you. And that has been, for me, the biggest thing in all of this. I always look at the things that I go through. It's because I can handle it, but it's for me to help others, to help guide others. And that has been the biggest thing for me, is to create a community. A community where people feel safe, they can thrive, and they can have a level of happiness and joy that is independent of a partner. So I currently go to Courageous Church, Tampa, and I just started a single small group for anybody who's looking to grow and build community. The main objective is to create a community where we can just thrive. How cool is it to be able to have men and women teaching each other how to do things, right? Or when you start dating, you can run it by your friends and say, well, tell me, what do you think of this? Or what's the best way to approach this? I usually do it this way, but because I think a lot of times we always feel like we have to romanticize our interactions with the opposite sex, and we miss out on the opportunities to have genuine connections. And so that's why I was very intentional about making it co-ed, because I think men and women have something to learn from each other, and it's going to make our relationships better. And why just can't we build our own community when the men can teach the women how to change tires, and the women can teach the men how to cook and decorate their house? Like, why can't we thrive together while we're in this season? Like, this season does not have to be in isolation. We don't have to be alone. We literally can live in community together and build our own little fun community. This doesn't have to be a lonely season. This doesn't have to be a stressful season, an emotional season. This could be one of the best seasons of your life. And you just never know what comes on the other side of that. And a lot of times we don't even give it a chance. We shut it down before there's an opportunity. And you do get in that space where it's like, whew, you start to say, what is wrong with me, right? There's nothing wrong with you. Sometimes when you go through healing, you realize how much is wrong with other people. How many people haven't healed? So then when you were naive and you weren't healed, you had this large pool of people to pull from. And then you go through your healing process and you're like, oh, wait, the pool is really small. And you're more selective, and that's okay. And I just think the more time that you take, the more selective you are, the more successful your relationship is going to be. And no one's saying perfection. No one's saying fairy tale, because, you're trying to meld lives with someone else. But you set yourself up for just a better opportunity to have a good relationship, to have a good marriage when you take your time.
And I would say, too, if you don't find a person and you grow old by yourself, and I think that's why another part that I always love that you bring in is the community piece. Mm-hmm. And I've been in mental health since 2015, and I've always done groups, and I've always done co-ed groups myself. And I always encourage co-ed groups. Even if I have the choice, they'll say, like, oh, you could do this or that. And I'm like, no, I want everybody. I want a mixed bag, because I do notice how good, like having a mom from Panama and a dad from Alabama and growing up in that environment, I just notice how when we blend everything and we work together and we understand each other better and have these conversations, like, we do so much better. But I agree. We have so much we can learn together, and I think we need to learn how to interact together and learn the differences of each other and learn how to talk through things.
Yeah, it's important, because as kids we weren't taught that. The first thing they ask you got a girlfriend? Mm-hmm. You got a boyfriend? Who do you like? That's the first thing. Or, let you become friends with someone of the opposite sex. At 5 and 6 years old, people are already asking you, is that your girlfriend? Do you like them? Like, we're kids. We just want to have fun. And so a lot of it is unlearning and relearning. And so we have to unlearn the things that society has taught us about interacting with the opposite sex and relearning what that looks like. Now, if great relationships come about, sure, that's wonderful. But that shouldn't be the goal. The goal should be to build community. Because like you said, when people growing old, just because you're married, that doesn't mean that growing old means you won't be alone. How many people were married and then still end up in a nursing home alone? And then you have these people who were never married, and then the visitors never stop coming. Marriage is not an indicator of whether or not you're worthy, or an indicator of whether or not you're a good or bad person. You just so happen to find someone. And I think we put so much weight on that. And there's this hierarchy that has been created that if you're not married, you haven't arrived. And you can live a very fulfilling and beautiful life as an unmarried person.
Oh, so many people need to hear that.
Yes,
as a therapist, I have so many people coming in there in such desperation. I'm single. Oh my goodness. And it's like, I tell them it's like they're trying to hold water in their hands like this, and it's just running through their hands. And the more you try to hold it, the faster it's running out.
Yeah. I mean, truly. And that's something I've learned. And like I said, and building community has helped me just live a very beautiful life. I had someone recently was telling me, like, basically trying to imply that my standards were too high. And I was like, well, I don't think they're too high. They just aren't what you understand. And I'm like, I'm glad that you and your wife met in the manner that you did. I'm like, but when you get of a certain age and you get to a certain level of healing, your standards change. And then he's like, well, it sounds like you haven't figured out. Well, just live life. I'm like, I'm living life. I've been living life. I've been traveling the world. I've been enjoying growing my business and, helping other people and growing. Like, I'm living a very fulfilled life. Like, I don't know if there's much more life to be lived. And so, thanks for the advice, but I'm already doing that and have been doing that. And so don't pity me because I'm not with someone. Celebrate me for being filled with joy in this season. And don't pity anyone in this season because it can be very fulfilling. I mean, I see people who were happier when they were single because they had more freedom. And that's not to slight marriage in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just being honest. And so I would say live every bit of your single season to the fullest so that when you do get married, you're actually excited for some of the downtime. You're excited for life to slow down a little bit because you're like, woo, I've been running, I've been doing, it's been great. But just enjoy this time because you never want to look back 5 years from now and say, wow, I wasted all that time. I wasted all that time being angry and sad. Like, I'll this actually use this in the book. So back in 2012, I was without a job for 2 months. And the entire 2 months, I worried about having a job. And I looked for a job every single day. Even though I had already had a job secured, it just was, the start date was delayed. And then after I started working, it was like, 8 years before I ever had that level of rest again. But all I could think about is how I squandered that 2 months of not working because my bills were paid. I was covered, but I was uncomfortable. And I squandered that time. And all I kept saying is, man, if I ever get that time back. And when 2020 happened, I took advantage of every bit of that time. If we could go back into lockdown, I would be the first person to sign up. Because not to have to be somewhere, not to to just literally be able to rest and have a schedule that no one is demanding you to do anything and you get to go be with nature and you get to do all of these things, I was not going to waste that time again. But, when you're single and you waste that time and you get married, the hopes is your marriage will last so that time doesn't come back.
Especially if you're single and you're wasting that time in misery and just that thing you were saying earlier is just like a pity party for yourself. Like, you and I are both very open about our emotions. It's okay to cry and everything, and I think there's a time and place for it and you need to release that to a certain extent. You need to process through that.
Yeah.
But then that's one thing I really appreciate about you too is that eventually we need to be able to come back and make that game plan and okay, I'm not happy here. What's the next step?
Right. What's the next step in finding joy? Because yes, I talk about it in the book. It's not always easy. There are going to be days where I hate this. This is horrible. Just don't sit in it. Feel what you feel. Acknowledge it. Write it down. Do whatever you need to do. And then move past it. The problem comes when you sit in it. And now it's stealing your joy. You're unable to, now you don't want to do anything, you don't want to talk to people, you don't want to go anywhere. That's when it becomes a problem. But feel what you need to feel. I'm not saying that this is the easiest journey, and there have been many days where I'm like, is the time up yet? What is going on? And then, I just have to say, well, if the person hasn't come yet, maybe they have more work to do. Maybe it has nothing to do with me. And a lot of times we think we haven't met our person because there's something wrong with us, but maybe there's just a little bit more time. Maybe there's some breaking and shaking going on in their life. I mean, they may not even be in this country. You just don't know. And so instead of trying to internalize it and make it a you problem, just work through your feelings and just keep going and keep pushing. And, one of two things are going to happen. You're going to meet your person, or you're just going to be very content with being by yourself. But I don't think having a pity party should ever be the option.
Maybe a little pity party.
Yeah, maybe like you can feel your feelings. I don't ever want to tell you not to feel your feelings. But when it becomes to the point where you're depressed.
There you go. That's that word, depressed.
And now you don't see the joy in things anymore. Now you can't get out of bed. Now you're thinking about ending your life because it's like, oh, this is so terrible. I don't want to do this anymore. That's when it becomes a problem.
Excellent point. Thank you for pointing that out too. And that's what I would say as a clinician, severe depression. And if you ever find yourself in that state, what Paige is mentioning, please reach out to your local providers. That's what we're here for. And when people come to me and tell me that they're in that state, and they're like, I don't even know if I should be here. And I say, no, you're in the exact place you need to be. I'm so thankful you're here. Thank you for coming because that's what therapy is for, is especially, if you need a little check-in and you're doing okay, you want somebody to kind of check you like Peggy's granddad checked her one time, that's good too. But if you're really depressed, moderate to severe, and you don't even know what that means, but I mean, just what Paige is saying is like loss of interest in activities, you're having some hopelessness, thoughts of not wanting to be here anymore. I mean, just those three off the top are telling me like, hey, there's something pretty substantial going on.
Yeah, I would say definitely go to, a therapist and just constantly check your feelings. Doing check-ins, and it's really important, checking in with how you're feeling. Because it's easy to get on autopilot, and then it's like, I'm not going to feel anything. No, feel your feelings. Be aware of them. Be able to communicate with what you're feeling.
So we're going to finish out with the book, and we're going to move on to our next topic. And we're going to include the link for Paige's book. Please check out that book. That was a wonderful book. It was a wonderful reading.
Thank
and I'm going to
you.
reread it again. I love the way you write, too. You're very, concise, but it's just, very authentic the way you are in your writing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
As far as therapy goes, Lakeland, Florida, if you're around there, check out my company, Atala Counseling. That's where I work at, and I'm so happy to be surrounded by a great team. And I know that's something that you keep mentioning, too, is, you and I are very independent people. I love my independence, but I love to be surrounded by a good, strong group of people, too.
Yes.
So I think your people really show who you are, and you can't shine unless you have the right team around you. So what does teamwork mean to you? Why did that become so important?
I got tired of doing it by myself. It gets stressful when you try to do everything by yourself, which to me it resulted in having a total breakdown and being like, I can't do this. I can't hide how I'm feeling. I have to be honest, and that honesty allowed me to see the importance of teamwork. But it all comes down to trust, right? As a kid, couldn't trust that certain family members would be people of their word. They keep their word. And so that translates into my interactions with all people. Well, I'm going to do everything because I know I'm going to get it done, but I can't trust if you're going to get it done. But finding people that you can trust with, the important things in your life. And, that takes time to establish what that looks like. But once that is established, take advantage of it. Because we're not meant to do everything by ourselves.
Absolutely. And not only that, but think about the teams where you work at. Think about DCF, Department of Children and Families. There's wonderful teams around Florida that do wonderful work. And what else, Paige? What are some teams around here that you see some strong people doing great work?
I mean, for me, I always go back to church, but church is ran by teams, ministry teams. Probably 80% of 90% of churches wouldn't exist without teams, without people showing up and volunteering. And so when you think about the level of charity and work that's done through church, that wouldn't exist. When you look at your local charitable organizations, they would not exist without teams. Like I think of one organization, the Florida Dream Center. They do 1.5 million pounds of food a year. They deliver meals to families. That would not happen without teams. Having teams are super important in every aspect of your life, like you said, at work, in your personal life, and a lot of the things that we do. I mean, even you think about like the stores that we shop at, all of that's built around teamwork.
Right, exactly. Yeah, good point. Even when I worked at Lowe's, you always had that one team that you work with. When you worked at Kohl's, you're just looking for that one team member. It's like, oh, as long as you're here, I'm good.
I'm good to go. I'm good to go. You're gonna have me, you're gonna have me covered, and I think that's important. Finding your team, finding your people is super important.
Beautifully
In
said.
any aspect in your life.
So, there was something else. Before we get out of here, I just got to touch on this because I was just looking you up, and this was so amazing. I thought, I noticed that recently you were in a magazine from Miami, and they did an article on you.
Yeah. Shout out Miami.
Shout out Miami. What were they talking about? How did they find you?
That I don't know. I don't know how they found me. I just got an email saying that someone had recommended me, but the person, I didn't recognize their name, so I don't know. But basically, they just wanted to know about my business. So I have a brand and marketing business. I am a woman of many hats. And I have a studio out in Largo, Florida. And so we do brand photography, brand coaching, and we do some digital marketing, so social media management, developing like marketing assets and all of those things. And I don't know, someone, referred me as someone that they wanted to that they should write a story about. And then they decided to interview me, and it was a great experience. I've had the benefit of being featured in quite a few things in the past 2 years, which has been great. But the beauty of it is it's still circulating, and people are able to still contact me. So other opportunities have been coming from those features. Like I was just on a podcast 2 weeks ago from that. A school found me, and now they want me to come and speak to their high schoolers about, careers and the importance of making the right choices. And so, once again, I'm like, it's God, because I don't know. When I saw the email, I thought it was a scam, but I was like, I don't recognize this person's name. Like, who? I don't know who that is. But it all worked out. The interview went solid, and Shout Out Miami is really cool. So it's like a local magazine that highlights entrepreneurs and small businesses, and then they give you the opportunity to shout out some of the things that you like. So some of the cool restaurants to check out in your city, some of the cool places to check out. So for me, I highlighted Urban Drinkery, which is like a locally owned, like a winery in St. Pete on 22nd Avenue South. And then I also highlighted my church, Courageous Church Tampa. Great church. If you're looking for a church, we're located on 1602 North Florida Avenue. I just had it memorized. And I don't remember the other thing that I shouted out, but because it's been a little minute. But it was great to just know that, like, wow, you're doing this work and someone recognizes it. There was a time in my life where that was important, right? Like, it was really important to be featured in all of these things. And then one day I got overwhelmed, and I was like, I don't like this. I just want to do the work. And if someone recognizes me, they do. But I'm not going to put myself out there. Like, I'm not going to write to editors, and I'm not going to do that. There's nothing wrong with that at all, but it's just not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be recognized for the work that I'm doing through nominations or recommendations from other people. And I took a year of not doing anything. And then this year, floodgates have opened, and now everyone wants me on their panel, on their podcast, in their feature, and I'm just grateful. I am super grateful. I like to talk, and so anytime that I can add to the conversation, I can challenge normative thinking. I can encourage people to be the best version of themselves. I'm down for it.
I feel that. And, I think that really speaks to your character. And from my perspective, I just want you to know I really think that you're very authentic, you're very genuine, and you're very compassionate about the community. I never see you hold back. You give everything you have. Even with this, it's like I've been calling people for 6 months, like, hey, let me interview you. And everybody's like, yeah. And when I called you, you were like, okay, here's the address, here's the time. I'll see you here. And then here we are, it's like you don't play around when things are important. It's like you handle business.
Yeah, because I believe in trying my best to be a woman of my word. I try really hard. I have a issue with triple booking, overbooking. So I try to really live by my calendar. And so because I know that I'm really busy and, in demand, I try to make sure that when someone asks me something, I get something on the calendar, because I think we live in this society where it's like, oh, let's do lunch. And then a year passes and we never do it. So now when people say, let's do lunch, it's like, okay, this is my availability for the next couple of weeks, when and where. I want to be as authentic as possible. I want to have genuine connections. And so for me, it's when someone asks me something, I try my best to be present. I try my best to show up. And so it's like, let's schedule it. Let's do it. Now, if it's not on my calendar, it probably won't happen because I will forget, or, I just wear a lot of hats. And so that's why anytime, even if it's something very personal, like let's just go have a cup of coffee, it's going on the calendar. Because I just want to make sure I don't overlook that. And so, but yeah, I believe in genuine connections. I think we live in a very superficial world. I've been there, done that, where a lot of people say things and they don't mean it. And for me, I just take people at face value. If I had to identify a weakness, that's my weakness. I take people for face value because I'm like, why say it if you don't mean it? And so that has led to a lot of disappointment in my life. And I don't want to be the one disappointing people. So I try my best. Not always perfect in it, but I try my best to show up when someone asks.
Well, Paige, you have definitely showed up today, and we appreciate you. And thank you so much for everything you're doing here in the community. And I can't even imagine the things that you're going to continue to do and what you're going to grow into. It's just pretty phenomenal, actually.
Thank you. I truly appreciate it. It's always an honor to get to talk to you and hang out. And just thank you for thinking of me and having me on your show.
Thank you so much. And remember, if you are dealing with some severe or pretty troublesome mental health issues, please do reach out. Like I said, Lakeland, Florida, we have Atala Counseling. That's where I'm working at. Around here, we're in Largo, so I'm sure there's a lot of Largo mental health providers around. Do you happen to know of anybody, if anybody's suffering? Or?
I always say start with 211. That's our crisis hotline. And then they'll be able to direct you to the mental health counselor that works best for you. We have the community health centers here. That's more like community-based. So that's also a great start. But I would always just start with calling 211, or I would think the new number is 988.
988, that's it, yeah. Also, Paige, before we leave too, what is it that you do, and how can we put that out for women who are trying to build themselves?
So I specialize in brand and marketing. My target is female leaders who are looking to stand out in their industry. So, we help you build a strong brand to help you grow your business, promote your brand identity, and share your brand story, and just really help you connect with that target audience. And so you can go to www.beyourbestyoullc.com to learn more about the services that we provide, and you can schedule a discovery call. It's a brief questionnaire that you fill out, and then we get you on a call, and then we just start talking about how to help you navigate your brand. Or do specialize with women who are already in the process of owning a business. But if you are a startup, I do have some great resources and programs that I can refer you to help you get started, and then we can help you navigate your brand.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Paige, and thank
You're
you all. So please like and subscribe, and I will include the links of everything that Paige has mentioned below, so that way you can connect really easily to all the services she's mentioned today. But thank you so much, Paige, for being here, and thank you for everything that you do.
Absolutely. Thank you.